The next one is similar to the one I already said. Some of these are related. But it says, be patient with both. And what being patient with both means is, again, suffering and happiness. And I want to make a little bit of a different comment about this one, this point. Is really what, I think one way of viewing this is to say, it's it's giving a picture of what it means to be actually a real grown-up. Like a real grown-up from a Buddhist perspective anyway. Because again, you may disagree with it, and that's okay, but what the advice here is basically saying is real spiritual grown-ups, let's say, don't worry too much if good things or bad things happen. What they worry about is how they're developing themselves. Because to a large extent, you can't really control, you know, a lot of the good or bad things that happen day to day, right? There's a traffic jam, there's not a traffic jam. Somebody's nice to you or somebody insults you, you know. There's a nice person, you know, who you bump into, or there's a person who's really rude. Actually, you can't control most of that, right? What you can control, though, is your own body, your own speech, and your own mind. Nobody can force you to say something you don't want to say. Right? Nobody is forcing you to, you know, to think. Certainly, nobody can force you to think something that you don't want to think. Right? You have control over that to the extent that you've trained your mind. If you haven't trained your mind, you can't control the certain habits of thought have. But you can control that over time, and certainly you control at this moment. Right? In this moment, you can say, okay, right now I'm going to try to contemplate love, or no, I'm not going to bother. You have control over that. And so what this is saying is, and actually I'll even expand that a little bit. Part of what this is, there's an insight that underlies this point, right? Which is that experience, like when immature people like me are in experiences, those experiences seem like they're going to last a long time and they're terribly important. But actually, once the experience is over, it has no more reality than a dream. And you can see it, right? If you look back on your life, you can see that, right? Whereas the past is just like a dream. In other words, it's gone. It's weird, especially if the people you did something with are already dead. Then it's really, you know, when you think back and you think, well, okay, the person I did, not one person who's left alive remembers this particular experience, right? Then you have to check, well, okay, it was real in some way at that time, but how is that different than a dream? I had a dream, and that was an experience. You know, I had this interaction with my father, and that was an experience. But if he's not here anymore, in what way is that different than a dream? Right? They're both something that's in my memory. But at the time, it seems so important and so big, right? Like, oh, it has to go this way. And, you know, and so I guess the point that, you know, so the point here is that the point that's being got at is don't put too much stock in temporary experience, in these, like, what's the word? Don't make too much importance over, oh, this went well, oh, that didn't go so well. Oh, I won the contest, oh, I lost the contest, right? Those things aren't what really matters. Does that make sense? Yeah. The next point is guard both at the cost of your life. That's how it's phrased, actually. And so I want to think about that together for a moment. The both, the word both refers to, on the one hand, the first part of both, because both implies two things. The first one is general advice on Dharma practice. So that could include things like don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't lie, don't gossip, don't say things that hurt people, right? Things like that. You know, and if you've taken the Bodhisattva vow or something, they'll include that. So that's the first both. The second both are these kinds of precepts from training your mind. So why does it say guard those at the cost of your life? Because that could seem like kind of dramatic, right? Guard at the cost of your life. That, I mean, that is about as dramatic as you can get, isn't it? But what it's saying really, if you think about what's the implication of that, right, is that those kinds of practices are the purpose of your life, right? Whereas not hurting others and being helpful to others is the purpose of your life. And so if you think, you know, oh, so if you think about the implication of that, right, it's saying sometimes our ego will say, oh no, this is more important. Right? Like, this other thing is more important than being honest and straightforward and honorable. And what this is saying is that's not true. In other words, don't believe that. Everybody, in other words, like, almost, maybe, I think there are exceptions actually. Most people, right, who do something that really hurts other people, like, they're not thinking, oh, I really want to, again, some sociopathic people, yes, they're thinking I want to hurt people. Most people, that's not what they're thinking, right? They're just thinking, oh, but this is really important. I really want to do this. This one's the exception. Right? Now I can make the exception. It's not that big a deal. And what this is saying is, no, it is a big deal. This is your life, right? And when you're private or you're alone or like nobody's watching and you think, oh, you know, this one's really important to me and it's okay to make an exception right now, so I'm not going to be so honorable right now. What this advice is saying is, guard it at the cost of your life. It's saying that's when you determine what kind. And again, think of this as the advice of a parent, right? What the parent is saying is that's when you determine who you are as a person, right? That either you're going to be a really honorable person or you're not going to be a really honorable person. You know, at the time when you think, oh, this is the exception, or this is the time nobody's going to really notice, or hardly anybody, it doesn't affect people that much, right? Like, you know, when people make, you know, huge cheating on Wall Street, right? They're thinking what? They're thinking, oh, well, this is the one exception. It's not that big a deal. You know, it'll benefit some people, you know, and I don't know if it's going to hurt somebody else. Maybe not. Right? Nobody thinks, again, unless they're a sociopath, almost nobody thinks, oh, I'm doing this because I really want to hurt millions of people. Right? But all of us have moments like that. Right? That's what this point is saying is, you know, it may not be, it may involve trillions of dollars, and it may not involve people, like, you know, hundreds of people dying or something, but that's not the point. The point is what kind of person do you want to be, right? And, you know, that's what's so, I think, touching about someone like this Geshe Ben I mentioned earlier, right? Is that's what he was doing. He was saying like that. You know, there's a famous story, I'm pretty sure it's him, that he had set up, he was doing a retreat somewhere in a cave, I think it was a hut or a cave, and his sponsor was coming, the person who was going to, like, sponsor his retreat. And he set up his altar really, like, very ornately, much, you know, like, really, like, with beautiful water bowls, and, like, you know, he put his, like, best, what's called, like, silk scarves out. And then he looked at the altar, and he thought, after he finished all that, he looked at it, and he thought, oh, it looks beautiful. And then he thought, wow, I only did that because my sponsor's coming. That means I did it because I was hoping to get more money, right? And he said, then I'm just like a traitor. He said, I'm worse than a regular cheater, because I'm exaggerating from what I usually do. And I'm using spiritual things. I'm using a statue of the Buddha and, you know, these beautiful paintings to get money out of somebody. He said, that's, you know, I'd be better. That's worse than when I was a robber. At least then I was honest. You know, people knew I was a robber. So he took a bunch of mud and he threw it all over he threw it like dirt, so it looked horrible. You know, his altar looked terrible then. And then the sponsors came and like looked and were like, and they say his teacher said, oh, that was the best offering made all day. That pile of mud was the best offering made all day that day in Tibet. Because it was an offering against his ego. So I'm just giving an example where it's like, it's small things, right? He wasn't trying to cheat. You know, if he had left the altar up, it wasn't that he was cheating lots of people or he wasn't going to harm lots. But it was that he realized my motivation isn't straight. I don't want to be that kind of person. And so I'd rather have less and not be that kind of person than have more and be somebody who puts on a show to get something from somebody. So it's just an example about this point, right? So it doesn't have to be huge things. It can be little tiny moments. It's like, am I being straightforward or am I being somehow a little bit phony? So it's saying guard that at the cost of your life. So now does it make sense? Because at first it can seem dramatic. Oh, guard at the cost of your life. And yet, it really makes sense. In other words, that's what's important. That's what it's saying. The next one is train in the 3 difficulties. Is that how it's phrased there? Yeah, train in the 3 difficulties. So, I'll say first what the 3 difficulties are. The 3 difficulties are noticing your own internal mental states that are afflicted, like so noticing your own bad emotions, basically, your own unrealistic thoughts, your own pettiness and foolishness and negativities. Second one is stop them temporarily, and the third one is stop them permanently. Those are the 3 difficult things to do. And I would say, like, right. First of all, somebody last time said made a comment. This is very psychological, right? Which it is, isn't it? It's all about your own mind. And if it's okay, I want to expand on this one just a little bit. Train in the 3 difficulties. Those are the 3. No, because lots of people take on difficult things, actually, right? Like, people take on all kinds of difficulties, like to make money, right? I mean, all kinds of challenges. sometimes people take on incredible difficulties, like to find a partner, right? A boyfriend or a girlfriend. And sometimes people go through also so much hardships just to go fishing, right? Like get up really early and hike and do all this stuff. Like it can take so much difficulties, right? And then also like people who different jobs, they demand so much difficulty of a person, right? And then even in the spiritual realm, actually, people take on difficulties, right? People sometimes, I'm going to do a lot of prostrations or something like that, right? And I'm going to go on a pilgrimage. I'm going to walk across India or something, right? So people take on all kinds of different challenges in life. And what this advice is saying is, if those external challenges aren't involving these, changing your mind, then they won't actually lead to any happiness, particularly. They don't actually do anything, right? The kinds of transformation, the kind of difficulty that that's most meaningful is one that involves changing your mind. Now, because actually, from a Buddhist point of view, first of all, like happiness and suffering come from your mind. Right? That's actually not that mysterious. And then also the whole path. Sometimes in Buddhism we say the path to enlightenment. But actually, sometimes I think path it's a metaphor, right? Whereas there is no external path to enlightenment. When they say path, actually the definition of a path is always a state of mind. Right? So in Buddhism, there is no path that's separate from your mind. Right? And so like even when they say the 5 paths or the different paths in Buddhism, all those paths are somebody's state of mind, or else that's the definition of a path. So the point here is that the entire path to happiness, the entire path to whether you want to achieve your own welfare, you want to achieve Buddhahood, you want to achieve to become a bodhisattva, you want to anything like that, it all involves your mind, right? So I guess one thing I'm hinting at here, right, is that it's a lot easier to take on an external difficulty than an internal one. Right? It's much easier to say, I'm going to build a big center in Washington, D.C. or something like that, right? Because that's still external, right? It's still easier than saying, I'm going to actually try to notice what are my own faults, right? Because who wants to do that? Actually, nobody really wants to do that. Right? Nobody ever says, what I really want is to analyze all my own faults, right? And then, how do you stop them temporarily, and how do you stop them permanently? Right? That's hard work, isn't it? Like, first of all, you have to notice them, right? And again, like, think how much easier it is to blame somebody else. Like to say the problems in my life are because of politicians, or because of my parents, or because of my spouse, or because of my friends, or some other or because of economic conditions, right, or because of socio-political conditions. It's much harder to take full responsibility, right? But this first point, notice your own, is saying I'm taking responsibility on it, right? Then it's hard work to stop them, right? To stop those faults temporarily. And then I'll just make a quick comment, which is to stop them permanently is a whole different thing too, because to stop your faults temporarily, you have to think different. Right? And you have to work at it. You have to try to practice patience and analyze things. Then to stop them permanently, you actually have to develop deep meditative ability and understand the nature of reality. Right? Otherwise, you'll never stop them permanently. So it's actually hard inner work. That's the point here. Does that make sense? That's why they call it the 3 difficulties or hardships. But what it's saying is those are meaningful hardships. Any other, Shantideva says, he said the chapter on patience, where he says, real heroes do this. They notice they're on anger, they stop it temporarily, and then they work hard at it, and eventually they completely eradicate it. And he says that such enemies can never come back to harm you again, because they're only in your mind, and when you destroy them, then they can never arise again if you completely eradicate them through deep meditation on the ultimate nature of reality. And he says that's a real hero.